Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Michael Franti here, and you are listening to this week's episode of the Stay Human podcast presented by the great Gibson Guitars. And our guest this week released her 12th studio album titled The Balladeer, produced by Grammy Award-winner Dave Cobb in July of 2020. She was a two-time nominee at the 2020 Grammys. She received back-to-back Grammy Awards in 2015 and 2016 for Best Country Song. And at the same time, she was the first female songwriter to win back-to-back CMA Awards for the Song of the Year. In 2017, her record, The Bird and the Rifle, was nominated for 3 Grammys and 3 Americana Awards. And at that same year, she became the first woman to be awarded Songwriter of the Year at the American Country Music Awards. So please welcome to the show the great Lori McKenna. Lori, how are you?
Hello. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing awesome. I've been like just looking forward to talking to you all day long, and I have so many questions for you. Because, I was kind of mentioning before the show that you wrote one of my favorite songs of all time. And I mean that, of all time, which is Humble and Kind, which is recorded by Tim McGraw. And I got to share with you that my experience of country music was that when I was a kid, Hee Haw was on once a week. And that was like as far as we got. When Hee Haw went off the air, country stopped being a part of my life growing up as a kid. And I just happened to be driving in a car one time in Las Vegas, of all places. And I was with somebody who runs Zappos shoes for sales there. And she had the CD in her car. And she we were talking about music, and she said she liked my music and country music. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then she played that song, and I was just so moved by the lyrics, the elegance of the storytelling and the rhyming, and just what I think of simplicity in the way that what the great Gil Scott-Heron told me one time. He was like, a poet's role is to make something that's really super complex, really super emotional, be something that's very, very easy to understand. And I feel like you just hit it out of the park on that song. And I wasn't even a fan of Tim McGraw's, and I became a fan from that song. And it's just something that has been, a part of my life. And I often refer to it when I'm thinking of like, how can I best tell this story? I'll go back to that song and listen to the way that you shaped it. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I really am just curious before we get into that, because I want to get into that song more, but I want to know about you because although you've written all this great country music, you're a Massachusetts person, I understand.
Yeah, I grew up, I live about 20 miles south of Boston. I sort of fake a country, like a Southern accent now,
Yeah.
because the Boston accent is so specific, I feel like. And when I started singing, people would be like, you don't pronounce your R's. And like, I realized that all these like speech issues that I didn't know I had.
It's really hard to sing songs about trucks and drinking if you can't say R.
Exactly. It really is. So I sort of, I don't know where I sound like I'm from now anymore, but I live 20 miles south of Boston. I grew up just like the Hee Haw reference is such a, I was like, yes, me too. And that's really I knew Oklahoma, the musical. I knew Hee Haw. I knew, just a little bit of Hee Haw, because I don't remember it that much, but I remember the Barbara Mandrell show was also on television, and we would watch that when we were little. But I grew up with singer-songwriters, Neil Young, James Taylor. I always say, like, in my house growing up, it was Jesus and James Taylor. It's like that we grew up with Carly Simon, Carole King, and just all the great songwriters of that time. I have 4 older brothers and an older sister, and everybody played music, and I grew up around a ton of music, but none of it was country. But when I started writing songs when I was like 13, My first song was like strangely this like love triangle of like a husband, a wife, and the rodeo. My brother.
I thought you were going to say a husband, a wife, and the roadie.
No, it was the rodeo. It was like he loves rodeo, and my brother was like, who are you? Like, where did that come from?" I try to keep it simple because that's kind of what I came up with, and the exactly what you said about simplicity. It's sometimes really hard. Like I just revert back to like, what are the songs that I love the most? They're kind of, the words seem the simplest. And, but they, exactly what you said, they say, you know, these powerful things. In my brain, I always say, what would Tom Petty say? You know, Tom Petty always like will say something that he will just say it, you know, it's just like, okay, we're trying to say, I love you. How do we say it? Because you can't just say I love you. Everyone does that. How about we say?
Well, you hope they do.
Yeah. So it's I think that's just where it came from. You know, from that really a lyric base of writing, and co-writing just brought so many. My co-writers bring me the melodies that I need sometimes when I get stuck in my own melodic head. That's why I love co-writing so much, because somebody will just take you right out of that and bring you somewhere
Isn't it
else.
fun? It's so great to just know that there's somebody else who's got your back. I think that's the hardest thing about writing a song by yourself is there's always a point when you write a song when you get stuck and you're like, oh man, I got this great hook and I got a great first line. I can't think of a second line that makes any sense. And then there's somebody there who's like, oh, bro, are you kidding me? I got the best. I got a whole handbook of second lines, you know, and you've got this other person there who's both challenging you and helping you at the same time, you know.
That's the best.
Yeah, it's really fun. Hey, so, you know, you're telling me about the first song that you wrote. So just take me back to, you know, you're growing up in this house and you have 5 other siblings, if I counted correctly, and everybody's playing music. Was it like everybody's playing music together, or was it like people are fighting over the guitar and I know I get to play a harmonica today, or what was it like growing up in this big house with all these other kids?
Yeah, well, my brothers are a lot older. You know, my oldest brother, I guess, is like 13 years older than me. So I don't remember living actually at home with him, but everyone else played the piano except for my brother Richie. So myself and my brother Richie played guitar, and everyone else played piano. And my siblings are pretty amazing, and my family gets along quite well. And I think we all sort of took turns, and there wasn't really a lot of playing songs together, strangely enough. It was really sort of the solo thing that each of us had and didn't really do a lot together, which is kind of strange thinking back. But I think that's kind of just, for some reason or another, the way we worked together. We didn't work necessarily as a team, but we were very respectful of one another. And my brother Richie was really the one that was like, if you know how to play 3 chords on the guitar, you got a song right there. You're writing these bad poems. You might as well try to sing them. And I just followed along. You know, I thought at that age, I thought everybody did. And then I went to middle school and high school and I realized, oh, nobody else is writing songs. I'm the only one that's doing this. And I didn't know anybody that really did it for a long time, except for 2 of my brothers that write songs. So, but my family's the best. They really are. Like I told you earlier that my mom passed away when I was little, and my brothers really raised me. I was 7, and I don't know what happened to my memory skills, but I don't remember her at all. Like I'm not sure if I remember her at all, or if I just remember like little glimmers that were just like pictures that I put into a memory. But my family sort of came together in that. Versus, you know, like kind of falling apart. And my brother Donald was away at college and like moved back home and like took me to school every day. And my, you know, my dad still lives right up the street. You know, I could walk to my dad's house. My family sort of went in, you know, instead of anything else. We were really tight.
Yeah. You know, so at that point, when you're that young kid, you're 7 years old, and you know your brothers are sort of taking over, and I imagine it was tough for your dad. What did your dad do? Because now you've got, 6 kids, mom's gone, and how is he managing this household, and what did he do for work? Like, tell me about
Yeah.
that.
Well, my dad worked for Boston Edison for forever, his whole career. And he was working in town, and that's why I think that's why my brothers were had to be such a big part of our lives, because my sister and I, because my brothers that would cook dinner every night. So my dad was just a worker, he was just gone every day from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. And my brother would have dinner done. Wow. But my dad's pretty remarkable. And he just kind of held it all together. And I don't remember him ever having to tell them, my brothers and my sister, to step up and do, and do more for the family. They just did. Everyone just did. And he was a worker. I think we're all kind of workers in that way. We all kind of retreat to work when, we get stressed. It's like, let me go. And my work is easy to be stressed and go retreat to work, because it's like, I'm stressed out, I got to go write a song, But it's just the way we came up. And it was a blessing in so many ways. It really was.
Yeah. What was it like for you when you started to, get into your, teenage years, and all these different outside pressures of the world start to come into your life? Was school something that you were into or not into?
School was not natural for me, I don't think. And my youngest is in high school still, and I literally think daily, I'm like, how did I get through high school? How did they let me out? Because I try to help him with school, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'll tell you, I always tell people, like, I'm a sophomore in high school right now, because I'm trying to help him with his stuff and do geometry. And I'm like, oh Lord, biology and geometry are killing me right now.
Oh,
but
God.
I don't know how I got through it, but I tell him all the time, and I've told all my kids this, that the people that I know that are the most creative and that have creativity in their art be such a big part of their lives, like we get to have it in ours, which is such a blessing. And I know we've all worked for that, but most of those people did not enjoy high school. No. And it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
I think the teachers at my school let me out as a favor to each other.
Yeah.
They were like, get rid of this guy.
That's kind of how I feel too. And I've had so many conversations with songwriter friends that felt the same. I had a good group of friends. I'm still really good friends with my girlfriends that were my group. My husband and I started dating when we were juniors in high school, and so I'm still with that guy, and I still live in the town, so that I still like have a lot of those pieces, especially because I didn't go to college. I think, my girlfriends are my friends, my songwriter friends, and my friends from high school, my closest girlfriends. But I had a great childhood, even with the loss of my mom. My neighborhood came in, and our church came in, and our family came in, and everything that I was exposed to, my whole life was really, for my well-being. And so I was really always in a safe place. I was in I don't know how I got that lucky, but I've just always been that lucky. So,
when I think and listen to your songs, the word that comes to mind to me the most is values, like humble and kind, that there are things out there that we should aspire to do or to be that make us not the richest guy in the neighborhood, not necessarily the best guy in the neighborhood, but the best version of ourselves, and the best person who can give back to the community, to our families, our country, to our planet. And how did you come to be that kind of person? I mean, you kind of describe your father as this hardworking person, and grew up in this family of people who really loved on you at a crucial time. But tell me more about that. How the values that you carry came to be, and just what are they for you?
Well, I think for me, my goal in my career, especially, has always been, family first, and And I think that's because my family was such a big part of my growing up. And I also grew up with this family up the road, the Doucette family, and there were 6 kids in that family as well. And the youngest in that family, Tina, and myself just came up together, and like back seats of station wagons, with 7 kids back there driving, somewhere to the beach in the summer and things like that. But I think that just watching what I watched, the people around me, I watched them do the right thing and watch them work hard and watch them, try to follow their faith as best they could. And when they made mistakes, apologize for them. And I think that I don't think things are spelled out really for us exactly the way I seem to be spelling out, I feel like, to my kids a lot. But I think that there's so much there that when you just pay attention to what's going around you, that's what you're going to pick up. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest blessings my father gave to us, and I'm sure my mom too, when she was alive, was that was acceptance of who we are. They accepted each one of us. And we all took different roads, but it was like, that's their road. And as long as you're a good person, as long as you try to always do the right thing, and as long as if you make a mistake, try to do better next time. And if you apologize, you mean it. That's their road, and let them take it. So I think there was this I feel like I'm a pretty accepting person. Even if I don't like something in the beginning, I'll try to figure out a way that I can learn to live with it, where it gives me some sort of peace, and I think that I learned that from watching my dad do that.
So your dad what was it like at home? He'd go to work every day, and he's working what I presume is a strenuous job, and a lot of pressure at times, and then he's coming back home. And how would he show up as dad at home? You said your brothers had already cooked, so. And now he's coming home to these pack of kids who are probably bouncing off the walls, and there's an M&M stuck in somebody's nose, and
oh my God.
How do you show up for that?
Okay, so strange, the M&M story, because literally yesterday I had a co-write yesterday, and I told the story to my co-writer that my husband's little brother stuck M&Ms up his nose and literally had to go to the hospital when he was little. That didn't happen to my family, but it happened to my husband's family.
It happens in every other house.
Every other house in the neighborhood. But no, my dad was really, he's really a point of grace for all of us. But he would come home, we would sit at this tiny kitchen table that had, just 6 seats at it. And, at that point we only needed 6 seats, I guess. But because my oldest brother, Bobby, was out of the house, and my dad would sit and tell stories. He would literally tell stories. He would tell funny stories. And he would be exhausted and at the end of the night and go to bed. And then he would, if I had questions about school, or he would read the Bible a lot. And I don't remember Bible stories from church, but I remember him telling me some of them. And I never carried them around. So I'm not very good at the Bible, to be honest. Yeah. But I knew that was an important piece of what made him. I knew faith was an important piece of what made him so good, because he just seemed so good. He seemed like such a good human. Even when I was a little kid, I remember thinking, God, this guy's he's got his stuff together. Yeah. I don't know how. He doesn't complain. He doesn't lose his, mind. And he just comes home and sits at the head of the table and tells us stories, and then does it all again the next day.
Wow. That's really, really remarkable. When we think of all the stresses of today, and there's people these days. I grew up in a big family too, and sounds very similar to your situation. There was lots of music in the house. There's all kinds of, every day somebody had a different sports practice that somebody's being shuffled off to, and both my parents were teachers, so it was on a teacher's salary. We were all fine. We had what we needed, but there wasn't a whole lot to go around. There was hand-me-down pants, and we all seemed to get by. And when I think back on that time, there was this education that was going on, because everybody was bringing something different into the house, like what you described. Like all the kids had their own thing, and the music was very diverse too. You know, my sisters loved singer-songwriter music. My brother loved everything from punk rock to Parliament and P-Funk, and I had another brother who's a jazz player, and my mom played piano in the church, and my musical I guess diversity of taste that I have today was just doesn't seem that weird to me, because in my house there was just all these different kinds of music that were being played all the time.
Yeah.
And it just came to me not in the form of genres, but just in the form of like, oh, there's a cool song. Oh, I like that song. Oh, there's another song, you know. And so what was that like for you being a kid? Was there different music in the house? Was your family bringing in different elements to who the house was? Or
I think that for me, it was always my brother's music, which was like that singer-songwriter world. And, you know, there was definitely the pop world at the time, you know,
just like
and then
whatever was on the radio.
Yeah, whatever was on the radio. And my brothers would, there was a lot of covers being played on the piano, you know, that we would get the sheet music, and I can't read sheet music, but my brothers can, and my sister can, and they would play, you know, they would play whatever songs were on the radio. They would, you know, there wasn't a ton of diversity, I don't think, in that. My father was more like classical and did a lot of like Man La Mancha, you know, while vacuuming and things like that. There was that, and there was like pop music, and then singer-songwriter. It's just so funny. Like he would never sing and walk around the house unless he was vacuuming, like as if the vacuum would, you know, we couldn't hear him, but we could hear him just fine. And he, you know, a lot of classical music, a lot of, my house was peaceful. It really was. It had a good energy. And my dad remarried. My stepmom came into our lives when I was in like 7th grade, and she has a lot of peace too, and just has like a good energy, and is very like quiet and loving person. And we, you know, I may be looking at it all with some rose-colored glasses at this point, but I don't really remember a lot of trauma, you know, like you know, your friends go through, or you get to be in high school and you realize, oh wow, like my family's pretty quiet. This one's pretty, you know, even with 4 brothers, you know, I'm still amazed that we ate dinner every night together. We ate dinner every night together. I can't make that happen here. I really have trouble making that happen here.
it's you know, 7 screens and a podcast roll there, you know?
Yeah, it's hard.
How do you think that shaped your storytelling abilities to today? I'm guessing that it wasn't just your dad who had stories from the day, but all your other siblings did. Did you guys go around and take turns, or was there a competition to see who could be the funniest? Or
now I have now that you say that, I have a couple of brothers that are really funny, but I think we just naturally did that. Everyone sort of told, you know, it wasn't like my father read that somewhere and said, okay, now we go around the table. I think he just naturally did it. And so we did do that. It was kind of like, when I'm thinking about it, really digesting it, like distilling it from this conversation, it was a little bit like group therapy, you know, like everyone sit down and just tell your story. And I think when you're exposed to that, even if it is your siblings, because you say like, it's true, we're all we're all seeing my father in a different way. You know, my sister and I have a different perspective of my dad than my brothers do. And so we're all living, you know, together, but also these very different lives. And I think just listening to everybody else's perspective on a quite frequent, you know, like with quite frequency, because we sat together a lot. We all worked at the hospital, which we could walk to. We all worked in the food services up at the hospital, and somebody would always have a story, you know. And once a week, my mother's parents would come and cook dinner and play cards, and so there was a lot of listening to older people and their stories. It's just how, it's just. You're making me really really miss it even more.
Well, hopefully a good song will come out of it. You know, so you got through high school just like, whoa, what was that? And now you're on the other side, and you're basically ready to jump the broom and get married, and now you're entering into this other part of your life. What point did songwriting kind of become a thing? Like, maybe I don't need to be like emptying the garbage at the hospital cafeteria. Like, I could maybe do this thing,
Yeah. So my husband and I got married. We were 19 and had our oldest son, Brian, who is 31 now. And and then we had 3 kids by the time we were 25. And we bought a little house up the street from where my husband and I grew up, like right around the corner from each other. And we bought a little house up the street. My husband's a super hard worker. Like he was like, I don't care if we're 19, like we're going to buy a house. Like I'm going to figure out he's a plumber by trade. And he went to trade school in high school. So he just got a job. And I worked for my brother. That was my brother, Donald, that I told you about. He had a company and I worked for him and had babies and just try to do it all at the same time. And, when I was about 25, I was still writing songs for myself. It was like my journal. Like most of these songs nobody saw, but I wrote a fair amount of songs in that time, because that was just my way of being creative, of relaxing. I didn't love like writing a proper journal as much as I loved trying to like just like write a song. And so I had all these songs, and my sister-in-law, Andrea, who's married to my brother, Donald, talked me into going to an open mic in Boston. And I just kind of got the bug from there. Like I sat in that first open mic and I watched all these people just get up and like throw their heart, like just put their heart on the table, like just like literally take their guts and like, just like, here's everything I feel. Here's a chord progression and here's everything I feel. I don't even know why I feel this way.
Yeah. And here's a hammer. Just go ahead and hit me.
You can clap if you want. And I just sat there like kind of amazed. Like I was really sort of way behind, to be honest, because now I meet people that are 19 and they have all of this figured out. And I was probably like 25 or 26. And I was like, wait, you can do that? Like it was person after person would just get up. Some of them could sing, some of them couldn't. Some of them were amazing and some of them weren't that good. But everybody did the same thing. They were all of us were just like spilling our guts. And there was a group of people listening. Yeah. And I just got the bug. Like, and so the guy that ran that open mic told me to come back. And I took that as like a little thread. I just kept pulling this thread and it, and like carved out time to like get better at, because I knew from that open mic, well, some of these people are really good, and that is a well-crafted song. Because I know what a well-crafted song is because I grew up with Jackson Browne and, Neil Young and Carly Simon and Carole King. And so I know what they sound like. And that person knows how to do it too. Yeah. And I just dove in, and it was, I never expected anything back from it other than the enjoyment of doing it. And I still try to keep that now. Like I literally just had this conversation with a friend, like where we've written so many songs over the last year. We don't know what's going to happen with those songs, but that's not our job. Maybe our job is just to write the song. And I just kept pulling that thread. And every time somebody opened a door, I would think I was crazy and I would step through it. And then there'd be, 2 doors. So I just, kept following it. And so by the time I was 28, I put the first record out that I made. Uh-huh. And then one led to another,
Did you do it on your own, or was there a label involved, or?
Yeah, I did it. That guy, that open mic, host, his name's Robert Haig, who was such a huge part of all this, told me, save, a few $1,000s, which was like inconceivable, to be honest. At that point, we were like living like where you paid your electric bill that month, but you couldn't pay it the next, you know what I mean? Like, so then the next month you'd pay the different bill, and like we were, I mean, I want to say week to week, but it was probably a little less than week to week. We were, just jumping the bills that way, still, but somehow carved out some like a couple $1,000s and made that first record, and then a couple more thousand to print it. And then it eventually got licensed. It got picked up. And then I had a label in Massachusetts called Signature Sounds. It sort of took me to a record that I made called Bitter Town, which Faith Hill got a hold of. And that's how I was introduced to Nashville. My confidence level never really reached where my foot was going, you know, where I was stepping into. I never had the confidence to step every step I took, it was like, I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to try it anyway. Yeah. And I was always rewarded somehow. Like every time I stuck my neck out, there was a reward, you know?
Talk to me about your husband a little bit, because that's a crazy dream, you know, when somebody's like, you know, because it's basically like starting a small business. You're like, you know, we're going to invest a couple $1,000s into this recording. You know, it's not like you're opening a coffee shop that everybody wants. You know, it's like, we're going to do this thing. And it's like this thing. I sing and I play this guitar thing. And like, you know, was it that your husband like believed in you all along? Or was it like, well, she'll get over this one if it doesn't work out? Or was it like, you know, like just talk me through what was going on in your house over those kinds of conversations? There was
a little bit of all of that. It was a little bit of like, well, my wife likes to do this, so, you know, why would I get in her way? Mm-hmm. But there was also a little of, she's probably crazy, you know, like, but he is quite unique in the way that even when I think back of who we were at that time, like, so like not grown up yet, he really allowed me to do all the things that I needed to do. He never got in the way of a song. Like people used to ask me, because when you first start singing these songs out, people are like, man, what's wrong with your marriage? What's wrong with your husband? What's wrong with your life? Why are you so sad? And I'm not sad at all. I've always been a really happy person, but the songs come out sad a lot. And he never said to me, I wish you wouldn't sing that, or I wish you wouldn't say that, or that kind of seems like it could be about me. And I know it's not, but my mom thinks it is, or anything like that. He never edited anything or tried to edit one thing I ever did. And it wasn't as if he thought, oh my God, this is going to change our lives. Let me help you. Yeah. It was sort of like, let me just give you space to do what you need to do.
Wow.
And then when I needed help, I'd say, hey, you got to help me. And he would. But he was sort of the greatest partner and all that, and still is. Like, we make a really good team. That's probably one of our best qualities together. Like we can clean a kitchen together really well. Like we're good at like working together like that. But if I didn't have him, especially in the beginning, I don't know really, because I wasn't putting my foot down anywhere saying this is what I need to do. Yeah. I was honestly the way my career worked out, it was sort of coming to me in a way. And I know that sounds almost cocky, but I had such small belief in myself at that level that everything that came, I mean, obviously I had to follow through, but I was so afraid sort of everything I was doing. When I look back, I don't know really how I was lucky enough to keep going.
Yeah.
I just loved it, I guess. You know,
what was your first, really just feeling of success, either as a solo artist, and was it something there, or was it that, wow, somebody else wants to record one of my songs, or was it that you heard a song on the radio for the first time? What was your first moment when you thought like, I did that. Wow, this is kind of working.
I mean, honestly, I also think I'm funny, so I might be my own, like, I say I didn't have the confidence, but I also like crack myself up. So like, I'm the type of person, like if I clean the house, people are like, man, I just cleaned the house. Did y'all see I cleaned the house? Like, I'm like, so I think it was literally from that open mic guy following me outside saying, you should come back. I was like, that's a good sign. And then I made that record after, you know, it took me, I don't know, a year or 2 years. And I made that record. And I was, there was 2 local stations in Boston that still play local folk music. And they played a song. Robert Haig again, like called somebody, pulled a favor and said, hey, they're going to play your song at noon today. Played a song. I had a show booked as a CD release party, and it sold out at Club Passim, which is this legendary place in Cambridge, which is still my home venue. And I played there so many times I can't even count. And all those things, I took everything that was positive and I just put it in my heart to, just remind me to keep going. And so really all of those things led to, it just took me a long time, I would say, but each one of those things gave me more confidence and kept me going. There really wasn't like a time, thankfully, where I was really down about it. There was times where I was like, oh, I know I should, if I want this career, I need to get on the road, and I wasn't going to do that. Or there was times where I would watch my friends. In the beginning, I wanted to be part of the Boston music community. That was my goal. And that's what I became. And so I was like, wow, I got to do this thing I wanted to do. I know people that play locally, and I know people that write songs now, and I get to be friends with these people, but I could never, they were all A, younger than me, and B, like getting in a Geo Prism and like driving around the United States, singing their songs. And I was just never going to do that. Like I just, like my rule is like, nobody gets to suffer for my art except for me. Like that's my job. Like nobody else is going to do that. Yeah. And my kids weren't going to do that. My husband wasn't going to do it. And even though he did a little, but that was really the main goal. And so each time I got to a place where I felt like, oh, I reached that goal. I'm part of this community now.
Yeah.
Something else would present, like life, like another dream will pop its head up, right? And somebody would walk up to me and say, you should sell your songs. You should write songs for other people. And I was like, what? I had never really thought of that. I didn't even know you could do that. And then that was where sort of Nashville came. And it wasn't until Bittertown, which was probably like my fifth record or sixth record, that Nashville came, became part of my life.
And how did that happen? What was your first like hit song, I guess?
Well, the first songs that I really ever had recorded were the songs that Faith recorded. And they were off of a record I made called Bittertown. And my friend, Mary Gaucher, who I came up in Boston with, who's like my guardian angel on this planet, she gave that record to a publisher in Nashville named Melanie Howard, who gave it to a woman named Missy Gallimore, who gave it to Faith Hill. And Faith ended up cutting 3 or 4 songs from that record. And so that was like my introduction to Nashville. And I went to Nashville and I got a publishing deal and a record deal and all these things happened. This was in 2004. And I didn't know it at the time, but I know now that it was like I won the lottery without buying a lottery ticket. Because for that all to happen, like, there's something else involved that doesn't really have anything to do with how talented or how hardworking I am, because I saw so many of my friends that were better songwriters than me, just not just working so hard to do the same thing. And I sort of got a call, and so when those God things start happening, I mean, I knew better, like you have to follow the God things, and kind of they all were. Each thing was really something else was telling me I should just keep doing it. Even songs, like when you write a song that you look back on, you're like, how did I do that? I don't remember that.
That came
part.
Out of me.
I'm not even that smart. Like, how did I do that? I know I'm not that smart. And so I think the songwriter gods had a lot to do with my whole life,
The song Humble and Kind, just because I love it so much, can you talk me through where that came from? And just what was the process that you wrote that song? And do you have a process or they all come out differently? But tell me specifically about that song, just because I love it so much.
That song, well, thank you for loving it. That song came about because at the time, my youngest, his name's David, he was 10, my oldest was 25. And they're all a different, just like you talked about your family growing up and mine growing up, everyone's in a different world, right? Everyone's like all over the place in a different world. And I sat down, I took him to school, took the little kids to school. We call them the little kids. And I sat down in the dining room, which is not where I write ever. And I just decided that I was going to make a list of the things that my husband and I want our kids to know. Like I literally was selfishly thinking, like, I don't want to be accused of not telling my kids like all the important things, and I'm just going to write it down. And I joke that I leave post-it notes. Like, I leave post-it notes like everywhere, like especially when I travel, like put the dishes in the sink. So I was joking, saying, I'm just going to write this down. You know, I'm just going to. And I honestly did think about things like put the toilet seat down, but you know, that's not
not very sexy in a
song. So
on the radio.
Not very sexy in a song. And I just sat there and I knew that I wanted the kindness piece in it. And the, you know, always stay humble and kind was right in the beginning of that. And I found that 3-chord progression. It's just a 3-chord progression. And I realized that the form, I could, you know, end the verse in the hook, and okay, so now everything has to rhyme with the word kind, right? Like, how easy is that? That's like a super easy rhyme. And then I just sat there and I wrote down all the things that I could think of. And my job at that point as a mom was to make sure I had something in my brain that attached to each one of the kids. Because remember, I have a 10-year-old that I'm still saying, hold the door, say please, say thank you. How many times do we say that to our children? And then I have a 25-year-old, you know, who's not living at home anymore. And, you know, and so I wanted to make sure I had each of the kids in there in my brain. And I just sat there for about 8 hours and lined them all up as best I could. And I did get super emotional several times in that song around the chorus. It was mostly because I knew how lucky I was to be finding it, but I also was surprised at, like we talked about before, the simplicity, the way that the words allowed themselves to be so simple and so exactly what I wanted them to say. Yeah. And I know that for some people that song is too simple, but I needed it to do that because I needed it to speak to a 10-year-old at the time. And then at one point I did worry. There was one worry in that song, and it was, is this sound preachy? Is it too preachy? And I got over it quite quickly because I realized I'm writing this for my 5 children. Like if someone wants to call me up and say, hey, your song's too preachy, I'm just going to say, man, I didn't write it for you. I wrote it for these 5 kids that I get to be preachy to. And my husband came home, and we've had this moment a couple of times, and they're always really special. And I played him. He comes home from work, and he works for the gas company. And so he's in like this uniform with these work boots that he's been lugging around all day. And he always overworks, like most of the people I know in the world. And he sits down in this chair in the dining room every day, and he takes his gas man jacket off, and he puts his stuff down. And I said, can I play you a song? And I played it for him, and he just stared at the floor. Just so emotional. Yeah. And when I can get him, then I know I did. I know I can, then I know I did something right. And I sang it in my phone, and I emailed it to Tim McGraw, and it was sort of all just like following the song from there. Yeah. But the song was my co-writer in that song. Like I definitely am not capable of what happened in that song. And Tim is my co-writer in that song in the way that he brought it to the world in a way that I would never be able to. He actually made the melody better. I always tease him I should give him some publishing, which I haven't.
Don't.
He doesn't need it, but he made that song the hit, obviously, that it is, but he tweaks the melody and he also saw it in a much bigger way. I see it as a tiny little prayer, like a 3-chord progression, and everything rhymes with the word kind, and 5 kids, and that's still how I see it.
Yeah.
So
some of the things I love about it is, as I do love that, the simplicity of it is, it's not really that simple, because you're dealing with very complex emotional issues. And especially when I hear lines like, I love you ain't no pickup line, always stay humble and kind. That is such a powerful thing to hear Tim McGraw say, because he's this tough, very fit, macho guy, married to this beautiful woman. But here he's saying this very solemn and tender thing to somebody who's younger than him, coming up saying, look, man, you can't be treating people with that kind of disrespect. You have to show up bigger than that, and that's why I think that song is so universal. And I love what he did with the video too, of just taking it just not out of your little kitchen in Massachusetts, and not even in Nashville, but there's people from all around the world, faces from every ethnicity around the planet. And it's so beautiful in that way, to take that message, which I feel is so missed today. Regardless of whatever your political beliefs are, anybody's political beliefs, I should say, it's hard to describe our previous president as either humble or kind, know, and yet that's the example. Like, how do we tell our kids, don't put people on blast on social media, and they go, well, no, that the president does it, and our senator just did it, and someone, a celebrity on the news just did it to some other celebrity, like. And how are we able to talk to our families? How are we able to talk to our kids about these really, really important things? And that's what I love about that song, is that it is that song that you wrote for your 5-year-old, but you also wrote it for your 25-year-old. And Tim sang it for, his kids, but he also sang it for somebody who's out there just kind of lost along their path and trying to figure things out. And so it's a really, really special song. I hope fans of mine who've never heard it, please go and listen to it. It's a really, really beautiful piece of, 21st century art,
Oh, thank you.
It really is.
Thank you. Well, it's, I toured with Tim and Faith, and I saw them around their kids quite a bit. So I knew that, I always think of Tim and Faith when I write, but because I love them so much. But I knew that we shared values, and that they worked really hard for their kids to know the things that that they're probably writing Post-it notes and leaving them, on the doors, like, be nice, But it's like you say, I think, I love the way you believe, your beliefs about, if we knew, we would love everybody if we knew their story. I love that you said that, because it's so important. And I think, I see a lot of hope in my kids and their friends. And, now my youngest is 16, and I know what we've all been through, in these past, couple of years, and watching those things on television and social media have been so hard. But I feel like the kids are really wise to, at least the kids that I'm exposed to, are really wise to, that being understanding and seeing other people is the most important thing you can do, is just see each other and see what's in there,
Yeah. This brings me to my last question perfectly, which is, what does it mean to you to be human, and how do you stay that way? How do you hold on to it?
Well, I think my kids, I always say my kids taught me so much more than I've ever taught them. And and so much so that I wonder now what I ever was capable of teaching my parents. I feel like our kids are, it works the opposite way. We might think it does but I think my biggest thing in life is that I try to connect with people in everything I do. Like I really do. And that I have one daughter, her name is Megan. She's 19. And when she was even when she was little, could barely talk, would go to the store and would be checking out, and she would look at the person that was checking us out, and she would find something positive, and she would say, "I like your hair." Like she was tiny, or "I like your hat," or like "I like your mustache," whatever it is. And when she was like 4, she would do this everywhere. Everyone she saw, she found something positive in them, and she would tell them. And it just came out of her naturally. Like she was born that way. I did not teach her that. And so that's just one example of the things that kids have taught me. But that's been a huge lesson to me. Like every single person, you sit on planes and you travel around, and you can totally ignore that person right beside you. Or you can try to find one thing that you think is awesome. And even if you don't say it, because I don't usually say the things out loud, but I try to say them to myself. Or if I think they're not being nice, I try to remember, well, I don't know what their day was like today. Sometimes I'll sit not very often now, but I'll sit in the back of an Uber or something and just try to be like, I wonder if that driver can tell that I'm sending him positive vibes. I think that's why we're supposed to be here to connect with one another. So I think the only way to stay human is to connect with people, and not just your people, but every people. Awesome. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense to me. I love it. And I've seen it at work in my own life, and I've seen it at work through your music. So thank you for the gift that you bring to the world. And if folks want to know what you're up to, how can they keep tabs on what you're doing?
I think the best way is probably the website, which is lauriemckenna.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Laurie, for being on the Stay Human podcast today, presented by Gibson Guitars. And man, I hope, I'm crossing my fingers, I'm saying all my prayers that someday we'll be able to get in a room together, or even on Zoom, whatever, and write a tune together. I would absolutely just make my whole life.
I'm telling you, anytime, I would love to. I mean, just talking to you today has been a blessing. So I'm in.
Awesome. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks,
so this is this week's episode of the Stay Human podcast, and stay tuned for next week's episode. It's going to be super, super awesome. And in the meantime, wherever you are, remember to stay human.